Here is the voice of the working class, Rick Smith.
And welcome, brothers, sisters, working class heroes. This is the Rick Smith Show. Thanks so much for being here. Today on the big program, lots to get to, lots to talk about. Oh, the fun, oh, the entertainment, oh, the enjoyment. We found out recently that we've got a Pennsylvania Senate candidate, Dr. Oz, who evidently thinks that kids having sex and having kids with their cousins, not a big deal. As long as it's not your first cousin, that second one, I guess he grew up in an environment, kissing cousins things, okay, not a big deal. As long as it's not your first cousin, you do what you got to do. Also found out that Donald Trump actually did have the nuclear secrets that he claimed that he didn't have, and stored them there at his Golden Palace. And the weird thing is not a peep from the party of family values or the party of law and order. Very interesting. The silence, kind of deafening. Crickets, if you will. And why? Because, this is who the Republican Party is. This is who they are, and their candidates. Oh, the candidates. They're fun. Some bad, some worse, some even worse than worse. And, for instance, and this is one of those things I wanted to get to yesterday, but didn't have a chance. Because understand, I've believed for years that, Democrats, Republicans, Independents, Greens, Libertarians, everybody kind of in the same, heading towards the same destination. We want to get to the same kind of place. I'm questioning that in a huge way. The kind of world conservatives want to move us towards, frightening. And I look at this state senator from South Carolina. South Carolina. A guy named Richard Cash. He, again, now go back to Dr. Oz. Hey, it's okay as long as you're not first cousins. This Senator Cash, he's making the case that 16 and 17-year-olds are mature enough to get married as long as they've got parental consent, but oddly enough, not mature enough to access birth control, even with parental consent. It's just weird, and I guess you have to hear the clip, and I got to play this because South Carolina Senator Brad Hudo asks Senator Cash about his position on contraception. And, I think you just got to let the good senator from South Carolina speak for himself.
They're not mature enough to be taught about contraception in school, and they're not mature enough to receive contraception on their parents' health plan, and they're not mature enough to get contraception from the health department, but they are mature enough to get married? Is that what you're saying?
Well, it's a fair question, and I'm happy to answer it. I think my position, when this has come up before, is if a 16 or 17-year-old, certainly if they have their parental consent and they wish to get married and their parents approve it, then correct, I don't have a problem with that.
But you just moved to table a bill that required parental consent to get birth control pills on the parent's health plan. Where's the logic?
Well, the logic is I believe sex belongs within marriage because sex leads to children and children needs parents. And so I'm not in favor of the state paying for contraceptives for unmarried children. I don't think that's a good policy. I think children come from sex, and children need a mommy and a daddy, and that means marriage.
So mom and dad can give consent to get you married at 16, but not to put you on birth control.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sure.
Yep, that's it. Yeah. for a second thought it was Herschel Walker's kind of, and this is kind of the Republican positions on things. Let them talk and let them tell you what they twistedly believe. Now again, South Carolina, another state. Remember, Republicans said, no, it's going to be a state's issue, and we're going to protect the rights of mothers and all this stuff. South Carolina is now a state that has removed exemptions for rape and incest from women's abortive care. I mean, this is, again, listen to who they say they are, and who they are is kind of frightening. Now again, all white guys. All good, God-fearing Christian white guys. And the question becomes is what kind of an America do we want? And like I said, I think this election is going to show us the direction that we're going. But, I've said for a while that, I used to believe that we all wanted the same destination. It was just different paths, different policies, different ideas. Not so much. So for me, where is this going to take us? Now, yesterday I got taken to task by a listener over my assertion that Reagan is responsible for the demise of this country, especially the demise of the working class. He still buys the myth that Reagan single-handedly took down the Soviets and is responsible for sliced bread or whatever. Still buys that myth of the sainted Reagan. And as I was going through this back and forth, my problem is I'm not a true believer in any one. There are no absolute heroes in any world. I don't even agree with myself 100% of the time. So I don't understand blind loyalty. I don't understand this kind of this blind faith. I understand making lives better. I want people's lives to get better. That's my North Star. When I was a kid growing up in the projects, I think about that kid growing up in that same place I lived and what opportunities and chances that kid's going to have. And I want them to have the same, if not better than I had. It's pretty simple. But I look at this kind of division that's going on, and I'm curious your thoughts. 1-866-416-RICK, 1-866-416-7425. Are you concerned about the direction that we're going based on this blind faith ideology? This kind of command and control of individual liberty and lives while saying it's about individual liberty and lives. For instance, federal judge in Texas, story broke today, has declared it unconstitutional for the Affordable Care Act to require insurance and employers to offer the HIV prevention drugs as part of their plans, claiming that somehow this violates Christian religious liberty. Well, kind of bizarre, but this is what it is. It's not like only gay people get HIV. I think we're past that. So I'm not sure what the rationale here is, other than just this control. And you listen to these ideologues, and the stuff that they throw is crazy. I mean, I go back to Dr. Oz. A clip has been unearthed of Dr. Oz speaking, saying that the uninsured don't have a right to health, which is kind of a twisted thing to say. But people should be given the ability to crawl their way back out of the abyss of being uninsured. And I'm going, am I confusing something here? Now, his solution is we should have giant festivals for healthcare, and people can get 15-minute physicals. It's a TV guy. This is the grand healthcare plan. This is the plan of how we're going to help people get the care that they need. Big festivals. You can come into the big pop tent and, turn your head and cough and all that. And the weird thing, and I go back to this, I used to believe this, that we wanted the same things, good jobs, safe neighborhoods, quality schools, health care, education, life, liberty, pursuit of happiness, that stuff. But sadly, I come back to this. The more I talk to Trump supporters, the more I talk to Republicans and Republican candidates, the more I don't think we share a similar future. And this is where elections matter. This is where getting out and voting matters. For years, people were telling me, Rick, you're crazy. Roe is decided law. They're not going to overturn Roe. They just use it for fundraising and for riling people up and getting people all lathered up in the panties. I'm going, no, they get the chance. They're going to do it. And they're going to go even further. Contraception is coming. And yet here we are. Here we are in this moment where conservatives are going in that route. And I keep asking myself, what happened to get government out of my life? What happened to smaller, less intrusive government? Now, we both know that was all nonsense. But the reality is this election matters. And matters in huge ways on how it's going to affect not just us in this moment, but the future generations of this country. What kind of a place do we want to leave? Now, the right does a masterful job of scaring people into, Joe Biden and socialism. And you go, I'm not seeing that. By all means, share. I'd love to hear the thoughts on what is socialism, especially from people who collect Social Security. I usually get, and those are the people who usually yell that the most because they're the most afraid of it. The ones who are secure with Social Security and Medicare. But, I'm not too far away from the place where the guy yelled at Arlen Specter, "Get your government hands off my Social Security." Quick note, Social Security is a government-run program, just for those who don't know. Just got to throw that out there. So I'd love to hear your thoughts. 1-866-416-RICK, 1-866-416-7425. What direction are we going? Are you concerned about the future? Quick break, right back with your thoughts after this. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. For working people from the top.
If you're a fan of the show, you've heard our labor history in 2 segments, and you can hear them on the radio pretty much anywhere in the U.S. Labor history has never been more important than it is right now. So here's what we'd like you to do. Tell a teacher. Tell a teacher that labor history is important and that they can get digestible 2-minute lessons that are absolutely free. Free to download, free to use, free to share. Tell a teacher to go to thericksmithshow.com/history and help us put labor back where it belongs, in the classroom. Generations of American workers fought, bled, and died to build the American way of life. It's our job to keep their stories alive. Go tell a teacher that we're here to help them do just that. Find us at thericksmithshow.com/history today.
Welcome back to The Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So today, President Obama and the First Lady were in D.C. for the official unfurling of the presidential portraits. Kind of took a while, don't you think? It's about 6 years since he's been out of office. And it then made the question, when Trump and Melania, when it's time for theirs, because look, whether you like it or not, you're going to have a portrait there. What should that look like? Now, interestingly, and not surprisingly, folks sent, images on Twitter of, him looking like a clown, and all of that. And I've had some racy comments about what Melania's picture should look like. But, ultimately, I want them to have their picture there. It should. Maybe with an asterisk somewhere near twice impeached and, some of the problems there. But this is one of those things where I think that it has to be done relatively soon. And I think it would be, incumbent on President Biden to move forward on that. Make sure that happens. Should be who we are, that institutions move forward and maintain, even if we don't agree. And look, I don't agree with almost anything that Trump did. A couple of policies I've given him, the credit he's due on, The renegotiation of NAFTA I thought was not horrible. He got a lot of input from labor and a lot of input from Democrats, and that that bipartisanship did help move it forward. The tariffs on China, I give him credit for that, even though it wasn't part of a bigger plan that you should have engaged the rest of the world around. But those are things that I agreed with and have always said that. What's interesting to me is I can't find a Republican right now who's going to give Joe Biden the credit that I think he deserves in this moment. And I look at this op-ed written by Paul Krugman. And I like Krugman. I think he's a bright guy. I think the stories are his articles are important. But interesting column on. And look, this will make the Trump cult really, really angry, because he asked the question, has Biden economics been good for workers? And the answer is, yes. Jobs have been created. We've seen unemployment plummet. We've seen people being able to change jobs. We've seen organizing happening. There's a lot of good stuff. And Krugman concludes that if you take food and energy out of the equation, since those are global commodities and things that no president really has absolute control over, when you take those out, that workers have done well under this president, and that inequality has begun to shrink. Now again, the alligator jaw is still wide open, but inequality is shrinking because a lot of the wage gains have been for the folks at the bottom, that we're buoying up the bottom, which for me, again, one of these moments where we should be raising the minimum wage so that that floor doesn't get to drop out at some point down the road, because we know how much, people love to give, like, hey, you're essential and you're a frontline hero and here's a bonus, and then claw it right back. Now, Krugman says that, Biden economics could lead to a revitalization of the labor movement in this country, because yes, there's a lot of organizing going on. There's a lot of energy around coming together. And for me, this is the exciting part of where we are, because this, I think, is the thing that we can agree on. While we may not ever agree on same-sex marriage or transgender issues, which are thrown out there specifically to divide and tear us apart, this should be one of those things that we do come together on, because as Krugman does say, unions do raise wages. That's their job, especially among, less skilled, low-wage workers. I point to this article over at the Washington Post, titled 4,000 Google cafeteria workers quietly unionized during the pandemic. And they pointed out that, and as I've said all along, union job, better life, that these workers at these Google offices, these cafeteria workers, their wages have gone up sufficiently. And as is pointed out in the piece, that the average unionized cafeteria worker at Google makes $24 an hour, pays virtually nothing for their health care, and has access to a retirement plan. Whereas the non-union folks like Sodexo, who I guess is just being organized down in Atlanta at the Google facility there, they make $15 an hour and pay through the nose for health care and have no pension whatsoever. Again, back to this, this union job, better life frame. This is what organizing does. And they finished up the article talking about this guy, Richard Ramirez, who a 33-year-old guy who works at this, works in the food chain there, the cafeteria chain in, I believe it's in Seattle, where he now makes, $27 an hour, has free health care, and doesn't think about, can I take my kids to the doctor? Doesn't think about, are they going to be okay? And he said in the article, he said, he thought he had it good. He was making $20 an hour at Google, and that was $11 more than he made at a job previously. But he didn't have any money for rent. He didn't have money for anything. And he was commuting, 3 hours back and forth to work, all this stuff. And because of the union, he got a livable wage. And, he said, since we unionized, I've bought a home. And that was basically only possible because we unionized. And for me, that's the message. I've been asked, why are you such a strong supporter? I go, because, when I was a kid, I watched lives get better. People got union jobs, food at the end of the month. Immediately better. Kids got, bikes, better clothing, better opportunities, bought a secondhand car, eventually moved out of that environment entirely. Lives got better. This is the message that needs to be repeatedly put out there. Out of the entire article, which was a lot of the facts and figures and statistics and all this stuff, the part that grabbed me, this guy's story, the fact that through his work, he has health security, doesn't worry about his kids getting sick, doesn't worry about if the kids fall and broken arm, playing on the monkey bars, because it has health security, has some retirement security. He's not worried about down the road, but also makes enough money that can buy a house, can build for the future. I mean, is that not the American dream? Is that not what we were told? Again, that work hard, play by the rules, get ahead frame. And is that not the common direction I think the vast majority of us want to go? Now, I go back to the stuff I talked about earlier. The fact that they divide us on all of these issues that aren't germane to our everyday lives. Same-sex marriage, I don't care about. And this is the weird part. I spend a lot of my day in the I don't care department. I don't care if two people get married. Wish them the best. Good for you. Doesn't matter to me at all. Why we have an entire political movement in this country are fixated on what other people are doing is beyond me. The transgender issue, I don't care. I want people to lead the best life that they can, pursue their happiness. God bless them. But does it matter to me what they do? No. And it shouldn't matter to anybody else because no one's making you do it either. But when did we become fixated on this stuff? As I said, in my workplace 30 years ago, we dealt with the transgender issue. Guy went away. He'd worked there for years. We knew him, he came back. He was a she. Nobody cared. Person came, did their job. They went home at the end of the day. It wasn't a big deal. Why now are these the things that we focus on? Well, because the powers to be know that this rips us apart. It divides us. It keeps us pitted against each other and not walking where we can together on issues where we should, like making lives better. The wealth class understands this. And while they may not be able to pay half the working class to murder the other half as easily as they've done in the past, they can pit us against each other. And this is the battleground of where they do it. I wish we would go back to the time where, as my grandfather said, don't worry about me, worry about yourself. This is one of those issues. Love to hear your thoughts. Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Quick break. Right back.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 2011. That was the day hundreds of ILWU strikers blocked railroad tracks near Longview, Washington. They hoped to stop grain shipments from moving in and out of the EGT grain terminal. Longshoremen had been sitting down on the tracks throughout the summer, resulting in over 100 arrests. No trains had moved in or out of the terminal since July. But then a federal judge issued an injunction against ILWU pickets. The BNSF Railroad tried to move grain once again. ILWU picketers in Vancouver were able to hold off the train until police forcibly dispersed the crowd. Then, hundreds gathered at Longview to block the train from coming in. That's when police went on the offensive. They used clubs and pepper spray against the longshoremen, arresting 19. They threw ILWU President Bob McElrath to the ground. Rumors spread that police had broken his arm. Hundreds of regional longshoremen rushed to Longview. The Seattle and Tacoma ports shut down in protest. The next morning, 10,000 tons of grain were opened onto the railroad tracks. The grain export terminal was the first to be built in the Pacific Northwest in almost 30 years. EGT hoped to undercut the powerful ILWU, who controlled operations at the port since its founding in the 1930s. The union refused to agree to work 12-hour shifts at straight time. The EGT hoped to break the hiring hall by refusing to recognize maintenance and inside workers at the terminal. They then attempted to fill jobs with workers from the operating engineers, but the ILWU persevered. By the end of January, EGT had backed off many of its demands, negotiations resumed, and days later, the contract was signed.
In the world of work, what two occupations might seem to have the very least in common? How about long-haul truck drivers and school librarians? Yes, an odd pairing, but solidarity forever. Start with truckers. The job is literally a grueling haul. You're wrangling a massive 18-wheeler some 500 miles a day for 2-3 weeks straight, putting up with traffic jams, storms, bad roads, lunatic drivers, helter-skelter scheduling, truck stop food, sleeping in the truck, and battling fatigue, aches, your bladder, and loneliness. Trucking used to be a good union job with decent pay and conditions, until the deregulation craze 4 decades ago brought in Wall Street profiteers and fast-buck hustlers who turned the industry into anti-union exploiters. As a result, the yearly quit rate for drivers is almost 100%. But rather than retaining drivers by upping pay and stopping their torturous treatment, the corporate bosses have rushed to Washington, demanding access to an even cheaper pool of low-wage workers, teenagers. Yes, put an 18-year-old on that 18-wheeler and keep them profits rolling. And here's another good job suddenly turned ugly: school librarian. Yes, while student enrollments rise and the need for these nurturers of our society's literacy is greater than ever, their quit rate is soaring, not because of pay or long hours, but because of raw right-wing politics. These dedicated, invaluable educators are literally being abused by demagogic GOP politicians and their extremist partisans who've launched an anti-librarian crusade, including book banning and witch hunting. Come on, how twisted are you to pick on librarians? This is Jim Hightower saying, forget the law of supply and demand. Today's job market is being ruled by greedmeisters and political lunatics.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So lots of fun and entertainment around the former president who evidently claimed didn't have secrets, now has secrets. The story changes so much. Yeah, I got to get on the memo. Whatever the list of the Daily Lie is, I need to get on that. Because the litany of lies just building up, I really can't keep track of it. But the hope is that the folks at the DOJ, hopefully they're keeping track. And look, Exhibit A, Your Honor, here's all of the things that, well, as my grandfather always said, you have the right to remain silent. You probably should use it. Just a thought. Anyway, here to share some thoughts on the Trump situation. I've asked our good friend Sarah Burris to come talk with us. She's a reporter over at Raw Story, rawstory.com, the website if you want to check out the incredible work that she does. Sarah, thanks for taking time for us.
Hey, happy Wednesday.
So, Michael Cohen, Trump's former fixer, says that indictment relatively soon.
I hope so. I don't know necessarily that it would be soon, because I don't think that Merrick Garland is going to indict somebody before an election, simply because I think what happened with Hillary Clinton is such a huge precedent that it freaked everybody out. And honestly, I think that's probably a good thing, because the last thing we need is to mobilize a whole bunch of MAGA people. And if we can, instead talk about things like Dr. Oz is already saying that he wouldn't have helped Trump and voted down the election if he was in the Senate in 2020. I mean, these are things that a lot of Republicans are sort of like backing away slowly from Donald Trump now that they're in the general election. And I think it would be nice to not energize a lot of those voters, because Democrats are really energized right now.
As they should be. Look, I mean, the idea of saving democracy, kind of a big deal.
You would think, right? And to their credit, if you ask voters what their most important issues are, the most cohesive one that everybody mentions is they're concerned about democracy, particularly among Democrats. So at the very least, people are taking it seriously, as well we all should.
Yeah, and and of course, they're saying it's row, row, row November. Because ultimately, you look at some of the policies coming out across the country, kind of, if you're a woman folk, I kind of worry.
It's a big deal. And so I've just spent the last couple of weeks digging through a whole bunch of data, both some surveys, some polling, voter registration, like a whole bunch of stuff since the Roe decision was handed down. And what I have found is that there is enough of just a powerful response, both from women and men, but primarily from Democrats. And women are, especially young women under 25, are registering in just ridiculous numbers. I think it's like in some states, I want to say like Ohio, it's a 6-1 margin. It's Pennsylvania too is having a huge women registration movement that's happening, and it doesn't seem like this is a really huge national effort. Maybe it's local groups that are doing this on the ground and doing amazing work, but it's happening in ways that it's just, I've never seen anything like it. I've never seen numbers like this. And turnout obviously we know Kansas is a weird kind of deal, what happened there, but the amount of women that turned out for that election where abortion was on the ballot outnumbered men considerably. So if we can keep that level of momentum going in a lot of these states, I think, there's a chance. And the other piece of it is that Republicans have really, really crappy candidates. So when they talk about issues like choice, it's, they want to make it illegal at the moment of conception. They want to make contraception illegal. They want to ban the morning after pill. Like a lot of these things that are so far outside of the mainstream. And there's polling on this that shows that Americans actually support this, and it isn't just Democrats.
Yeah.
People like contraception or Plan B. It's something like 80% of Americans support that. So
it's almost a no-brainer.
Are on the wrong side.
And this is one of those things where if you're against abortion, wouldn't contraception be the answer to that?
One would think. I mean, that is the one thing that I feel like Democrats, particularly feminists, have been asking for a really long time, is if you want to reduce the number of abortions in America, why are you not funding contraception like everywhere? Every kind of contraception that you could possibly want, and putting it, for free in gumball machines.
Yeah, because look, if men got pregnant, I guarantee that it would be available for free on every street corner.
Yeah.
We'd have drive-through access. We'd have all kinds of things that haven't even been dreamt up yet.
Instead of people handing out Bible tracts at the airport, it would be people handing out condoms. Like, welcome to Philly. Here's a condom.
Yeah, no, it's always incredible to me that it's gotten to be this difficult, and it's going to get worse. Oh, that's the sad reality. But I do want to get some more thoughts on the Trump thing, because I think this is important.
It's been a bonkers story.
These documents are really important because I got to tell you, I'm worried about the empty folders.
Yeah.
I'm worried about what was in the empty folders. Will we ever get to know what was in the empty folders and what happened to it?
I know, right?
I mean, I'm literally tongue-tied on. You go, hello? He stole top secret documents.
A lot of these folders, like it is, they're attached to the folder, which means that somebody would have to, detach them from the folder and take them out of the folder, these classified documents. And we don't know. We have no idea what we don't know, basically. We have no clue what documents were not there and then where those documents could possibly be. It is enough of a serious situation where I think you could very reasonably make the case that this is a national security issue and we should be sending people into all of his homes to ensure that he doesn't have this information. Like already we found out that one of the documents he has, this was in the Post today, was not just about nuclear information, it was about some other country's nuclear information.
Yeah.
So one of the things that Michael Cohen was talking about tonight is, what if that's Israel? I mean, Jared Kushner got $2 billion from the Saudis. Is that what they sold? Is that how they got it? It's it's a completely hypothetical question. We know nothing at this point.
But it's a serious question. I mean,
But it's the kind of questions that we shouldn't have to be asking. But here we are.
Yeah, but here we are. But here's the thing that gets me. I mean, I keep coming back to this place. Why is he still walking around because if this were you or me or anyone else, under the jail. Now I know my Trump supporters will say, he waved the magic hand and declassified everything. But no,
doesn't matter.
No, he didn't.
It doesn't matter. Even if he waved a his magic wand, classification wand, he still stole government documents. And that's the major thing here that I think he can't get away from it. Even his own court filings are talking about how he is, admitting that he took all of these government documents. And I think that's the piece where, if we talk about the case with Judge Cannon, the crazy trumpet lawyer or judge, that case is going to slow things down for a little bit, but there are a ton of documents that he took prior to the search from the Justice Department, the search warrant that was issued in Florida. Tons of documents, and some of those were also classified. So, I mean, it's very easy for the Justice Department to be like, yeah, we can just let those sit for a minute and we can start going over what are the next steps for the documents that we have already.
Now, you had Jared Kushner not too long ago say that this could just be a paperwork mistake. They just, they were moving out. And they just happened to scoop up some of the wrong papers. It could happen to anyone, which then leads to the question of, how do we handle these top secret documents? How did he get access to them? What's the chain of command and how this, because they're not just in a file folder somewhere that he can just walk into. I'll take this. There has to be a process in which someone brought him those documents.
And that is the big question that I think a lot of folks are asking is, how did these documents, and actually it's something that Hillary Clinton was asking today, is these are the kind of documents where she said whenever she was Secretary of State, some dude would show up at her office with them handcuffed in a briefcase to his wrist, would open the briefcase, and she would have to read them in front of the dude and then sign off that she had read it and gave them back to him, and then he would walk away. So these are documents that Trump should never have had the ability to take upstairs to the residence. But, my roommate made a really good point earlier today. Who's going to tell him not to? Who is in the White House who is going to say, sure, you can't do that? And who is going to stop him?
Yeah. So
with all of these documents upstairs at the White House, it makes it very easy for him to just throw them into a bunch of boxes and take them with him to Florida. But again, that doesn't make it legal.
Yeah.
And to Jared's credit, yeah, sure, maybe Trump just sort of threw 50 boxes worth of stuff in with all of his, shoes and flip-flops or whatever. But I think the bigger question is, if that's really true, then why did it take him 18 months, constant badgering from the National Archives, from the Justice Department, from back and forth lawyer emails and letters? Why did it take him so long to give them back? If you took a whole bunch of stuff that wasn't yours, and you'd be like, oh crap, my bad, here all of it is.
Yeah.
But instead it's taken Trump months, over a year.
outside of the fact that he believes that he's entitled to everything, and that's just the
Yeah.
personality that you had, and it's mine. I should be able to have this stuff. And we now know that this was nuclear stuff, and he's had some bizarre fascination with nuclear information and with nukes in general. Remember when he wanted to nuke a hurricane?
Yeah. And he's wanted to nuke a bunch of countries, right? Like he's talked about Little Rocket Man and how he could blow up North Korea, he could blow up Russia, Syria. There's been a bunch of countries that he's mentioned that. And so there's this idea that, if he has nuclear information about the United States and he has nuke stuff about another country, like this just makes it even more serious that we make sure we get in all of his homes and touch every single pair of underwear he's got to make sure there's not a document in it.
You can do
right?
that. No thanks.
Well,
That's not in my pay grade. You listen to the Rick Smith Show with Sarah Burris. Sarah's a reporter over at Raw Story. Make sure you check out their website, rawstory.com, to get the stories of the day. But here's the weird thing. I mean, we're in this spot where, you've still got the cult who, they're buying the lies. This is the party of law and order. This is the party of hold people accountable. Yet it seems that nothing this guy does. He's right. He could have shot somebody on Fifth Avenue and gotten away with it. And they're still going to defend. Is there a moment in this where people wake up and go, wait a second, no, this is really bad. This guy should be held accountable for something, because we don't want, the next president or the next to be able to do this kind of stuff or worse.
I think that when it comes to his supporters, I don't know why we even try to persuade them about anything. I just don't think that there's anything that's ever going to be able to move them. I think the majority of Americans, the non-MAGA Republicans, everybody else, I think they get it. I think they look at this and go, oh crap, this is really bad. This is really dangerous. This makes us look terrible to other countries. But it's just that a lot of Republicans, the loudest part of the Republican Party is the MAGA base. And that 30% of people, maybe we can't move them.
You just have to leave them behind. What's interesting to me is you're seeing some Republican voices coming out and going, well, we kind of are moving towards that F word, that fascism. We are becoming kind of maybe the party of authoritarianism. And going, becoming? Recently, you're just noticing? I've been saying this stuff for at least the last decade, that this is the way the party's been marching. And I find it interesting that there's still some folks out there trying to save the party, even though this is the direction they were going all along. Trump wasn't the leader of this. He was just somebody who benefited from it. Are you surprised at the number of people who are saying, I've been sounding the alarm?
I don't know necessarily that if they're just trying to be nice, I don't know for what reason is beyond me, but why?
Well, trying to save face, I would argue they're trying to save themselves. It's like a lot of the people who have come forward and given testimony. I think a lot of them just want to save themselves from prison.
Well, there's definitely that piece of it too, but this has been going on since 2010, and this has been going on before that. But I feel like that Tea Party piece of this, that really, crazy rabid nutter piece of this, really kicked up a notch in 2010 whenever the brown guy decided he was going to give everybody free health care, which isn't even free, right? But this is something where I think whatever Republicans are left who have not already committed themselves to the Trump train, maybe they're looking for a way off, and everybody is sort of saving face with this, they're semi-fascist.
Yeah, semi-fascist.
Maybe they're giving them that piece of it to be like, look, we recognize these people are shady, so if you want to take an out, you better go now, because there's not going to be, it's going to be very quick before we start, when we start saying they're just straight up fascist, and, we're all going to end up in re-education Republican camps or something.
Well, no, we're going to end up in Christian nationalist camps. I mean, there are a lot of people who are already arguing, a lot of our churches are already doing this kind of indoctrination. And I find it interesting that they point the teachers are indoctrinating our children with education and that book learning. when you look at what the right has done for years through these churches. That, wow.
But that's the thing about Republicans is every time they say, no, it's you, then you know for sure it's them.
Yep. It's that kind of
Over and
projection.
over, every accusation that they wield at us. And that's the thing about the fascism piece too, is that they've been calling us socialists for I don't know how long, and you're just like, really? I mean, and now a lot of people, I think, now you see the sort of big movement towards socialism. I think because Republicans have made it so appealing by talking about, all of these good things like Social Security and Medicare and education and I don't know, plumbing, all of that is socialism, and people are like, oh, I like that stuff.
Yeah,
give me
water.
more.
Ask the people in
Right?
Jackson, Mississippi, what it's like to not have socialism and water.
Yeah, exactly. And now the governor there is already talking about privatizing their water. It's like, oh, okay, now we're just going to make your crappy water that you can't drink or brush your teeth with just twice as expensive.
Yeah, it's going to be like Bolivia. I think it was Bolivia when they privatized their water. They wouldn't even allow people to put out buckets to collect rainwater.
It's going to be really bad, and it sucks because Jackson's a decent town. Some good food in Jackson.
Yeah, we had a good time when we were there.
Yeah,
Scary,
it's heartbreaking.
Scary stuff. Last thing I got to get your thoughts on the Oath Keeper guy, this Stuart Rhodes, fired all of his attorneys. Because the way I'm reading this article is fired all the attorneys because they weren't crazy enough or presenting a crazy enough case. As I read this, I think it's just it was a stall tactic. Ultimately, didn't work.
That's kind of what the judge seems to think too. Is the dude just wants to change his lawyers over and over and over again, which means that things are going to take longer and longer. And then maybe I guess he's not going to be a convicted felon, but the dude's in jail. Like, it's not like your life is going to get any better.
Yeah.
But I guess he wanted to try and hire another lawyer, and the judge just finally was like, no, we're not delaying this anymore. You're not firing your lawyers for the 50th time. Get over yourself.
There you go.
So we're moving forward. This is going to be a big case. This is the first of the seditious conspiracy cases.
Yeah.
So this will be interesting to watch.
I'm hoping for justice, and when justice is done, long jail sentence. Long jail sentence. There you go.
Amen.
Sarah, as always, amazing stuff. Hope folks will check out the website, rawstory.com. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Have a good weekend.
You as well, our good friend Sarah Burris. Make sure you check out her work over at rawstory.com. Quick break. Right back after this. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. We're working people. That's all. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. This day in labor history, the year was 1916. That was the day that the Federal Employees Compensation Act was signed into law by President Woodrow Wilson. The act was sponsored by Senator John Kern, a Democrat from Indiana, and Daniel McGillicuddy, a Democratic congressman from Maine. The act provided compensation for federal civil service employees that lost wages because they were hurt or killed on the job. There was great debate at the time over whether employees injured at work deserved to be compensated. Before the turn of the 20th century, those who sustained workplace injuries had little recourse. Employers blamed workers for accidents and typically refused compensation, leaving families destitute. Edward Gaynor, the president of the National Association of Letter Carriers, explained the debate around the 1916 proposal, saying, quote, "The only question, the fundamental question involved in this discussion is whether or not society should bear the burden of the injured worker in any industry." Increasingly, some lawmakers were beginning to make the case that society should indeed bear that burden. Workers and labor leaders organized around issues of workplace safety and demanded a compensation if they were injured on the job. The law providing such a safety net for federal employees was passed through the House of Representatives by an overwhelming margin of 288 to 6. Although the act only applied to federal employees, it was an important step forward in recognizing that all workers deserve to be compensated for workplace injuries. The Federal Office of Workers' Compensation Programs that operates today traces its history directly back to the 1916 Act. And because of this 1916 Act, 3 million federal employees and their families are covered under the Act's protections.
You're listening to The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk.
Well, I look to Alabama. So, ladies, again, voting, kind of important. Women folk, make sure you're all registered up and ready to go cast your ballot come November, because this could be, well, could be any woman. Evidently, in Alabama, there was a woman who was arrested on charges of having an unregistered gun and a small amount of marijuana, which at some point I do see being legalized. I don't know that this is something you lock someone up for, but she was arrested with having this unregistered gun and the bit of pot. As has been reported, normally that you'd be able to get bond out while you're waiting for your trial. But because she's pregnant and has admitted to the pot thing, evidently they decided that they were going to put her in jail for 3 months. And despite the fact that she's had some bleeding conditions and some problems and a history of miscarriages and all this, they put her in a jail cell to protect the fetus, and there she is sleeping on the floor of the prison. Again, the party of family values. And this is the kind of weird, bizarre stuff where you go, explain to me the idea here. You're going to put her in an overcrowded jail, possibly where COVID could run rampant through there. Make her sleep on the floor. Who knows what comes up with that? But that little very, very interesting. But again, this is the world that we're heading towards. Now, if you really wanted to help this woman, if your problem is that she's doing the pot thing while pregnant, which not thrilled about, to be honest with you, the smoking, all that, not good. How about, I don't know. How about rehab? How about, helping her with rehab? Not just demanding that she gets rehab, but maybe helping, maybe having a facility that'd do that. Just kind of a thought. Instead of making that part of how she could get out by, voluntarily going to rehab and paying for it and $10,000 in cash. Yeah. This is where our system really screwed up. And the poor always get hammered by our judicial system. The scale of justice, not equal. We got a guy who stole classified documents, nuclear secrets for other countries. And he's still doing the retruthing. Something wrong with this scenario. Something wrong in a society where this is how you treat women. Now, look, here's the other part of this. I don't doubt if she gives birth in that jail cell that they would cuff her to the bed. Oh, we would never do that. Oh, you should probably check, because we do it all across the country. Tell me about family values, and then show me a place where you are okay with handcuffing a pregnant woman to a bed. Insane. But that's conservative world for us. Welcome to America. I got to tell you, I think there's a better way. I think we can have a better future. I think together we can fight for that better future. That's why elections matter. So if you're appalled by something like that, make sure you're registered to vote. And make sure come November, you get out there and you do it. That's simple. That's simple.
Small green plants lined the bed of what used to be a frontier lake between Switzerland and France. It's existed for 12,000 years, but now it's relegated to just a small stream.
More than half of Europe mired in worst drought in centuries. Climate change action is way more popular than Americans realize. Plus,
a country famed for its oil resources, committed to going to sustainable mobility.
Saudi Arabia pushes to become a global electric vehicle leader.
Really?
Yes.
All of those stories and more straight ahead from BradBlog.com. I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
Stand by for 6 minutes of independent green news, politics, analysis, and snarky comment.
There is no climate crisis. It is a hoax, and fossil fuels are a wonderful thing.
It is 2022, and that is Virginia Congressman Bob Good. Hey, Virginia voters, it's 2022. Can you please vote that guy the hell out of office? This is your Green News Report. Okay, Desi Doyen, from heat and drought in the U.S. to heat and drought in China. Now we're back to heat and drought in Europe.
Yes, unfortunately, more than half of Europe is mired in drought. According to a new report from the European Commission, 64% of the continent is in severe or exceptional drought, the highest category, and it is the worst drought in at least 500 years, and likely more. The combination of record heat and drought has triggered water shortages across Europe and is contributing to a widespread increase in fire danger across the EU. Drought, heat, and fires are all worsened by man-made climate change.
Yep, they are.
Here in the U.S., new projections from NOAA hold a warning for coastal communities that are seeing flooding on sunny days at high tide.
You mean like Florida?
Yes.
Then I'm sure they'll ignore it.
NOAA's latest outlook predicts that sunny day flooding, which today occurs on average nationally about once every 2 months or so at any given spot, could hit as frequently as every other day by 2050. That's within the lifetime of a traditional 30-year mortgage originating today. New Jersey is crafting new regulations to restrict development in coastal flood zones based on future climate projections, not past flood data.
Good.
By 2150, sea levels in Jersey are projected to be 5 to 19 feet higher than today.
Don't tell Florida.
A disturbing new study finds that living near natural gas fracking wells increases the risk of childhood leukemia. Researchers at Yale School of Public Health found that children in Pennsylvania who grew up roughly within a mile of a fracking well are twice as likely as other young people to develop juvenile leukemia. But some good news. New modeling shows that Democrats' newly enacted landmark climate bill, the Inflation Reduction Act, will not only save consumers money and lower energy costs, but will also deliver massive benefits and cost savings for public health. By reducing fossil fuel air pollution, the law will prevent up to 4,500 premature deaths every year by 2030 and hundreds of thousands of asthma attacks, with the biggest gains in communities of color that are disproportionately burdened by industrial pollution.
Well, that is good news.
In other news, a new survey finds that climate action is far more popular than people in the U.S. realize.
Is it?
2/3 of Americans support government climate action, but everyone is underestimating how much other people support climate policies, incorrectly believing that their neighbors don't support action. The researchers found this false perception occurs across all states and demographic groups. Even Democrats don't know that climate policy is very popular.
And why don't Democrats even know that?
The researchers at Boston College partially link it to decades of right-wing media demonizing climate policy.
Go figure.
And it matters, because when people assume something isn't popular, they don't talk about it, leading to what the researchers called, quote, a spiral of silence that helps obscure the deep, widespread support for climate protection measures across the board.
Of course, they don't talk about it. They think others don't agree with them, and they're afraid to speak up about it.
Finally, big moves in electric vehicles. Saudi Arabia has launched a major initiative to become a big player in the global electric vehicle sector, investing billions to develop a domestic minerals mining industry and an EV manufacturing and processing supply chain for batteries and cars. Bloomberg News reports that the petro-state hopes other countries will swap out their dependence on Saudi oil for dependence on Saudi battery materials, a sector that China currently dominates.
Chalk me up as dubious. For much more on all of these stories and the ones we couldn't get to today, check out our website at greennews.bradblog.com. Find, follow, and share us planet-wide on the Facebooks and the Twitters at Green News Report. I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
And this has been your Green News Report.
Are you tired of think tank approved corporate news and commentary? Are you tired of CEOs telling you what to think, who to hate, and who to vote for? Well, welcome to the Rick Smith Show. We don't take orders from some boardroom, and we don't do focus groups or talking points. We don't work for them, and we never will. I'm Rick Smith, and I work for you. Join us daily at thericksmithshow.com and download the podcast and never miss a minute.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So, AP story caught my attention today. Headline, Michael Flynn, from government insider to holy warrior. And I think they left out a whole lot in between there. But it's interesting, he's now unabashedly claiming that this should be a Christian nationalist country, that, it's all about, everything should be about Christianity and, that kind of holy war thinking, and cashing in. I mean, look, religion's where the money's at, man. Become a religious charlatan and spew the nonsense and the cash will flow. To me, part of that, but also I think the guy's flipping off his rocker, but here to share some thoughts on the holy warrior aspect. I've asked our good friend Rich Ojeda to come talk with us. Rich is the national spokesperson for No Dem Left Behind. Rich, thanks for taking time for us.
Anytime, Rick. I always enjoy it.
So what do you think from government insider? He was national security advisor, part of that, to now Christian warrior.
Well, I think what you said, it kind of makes me think that he's trying to lean towards becoming the next televangelist, because everybody knows how lucrative that is in the United States of America. And I could see him with dollar signs in his eyes. The mere fact of what this guy has done since getting out of the military is absolutely just sickening, and one of the things that Colin Powell said before his passing was that the Army should bring Michael Flynn back on active duty and court-martial him for the crimes that he has committed. And it just seems like he gets worse and worse and worse. And it's quite scary, but it's also kind of scary when you think that a person like that actually climbed all the way to the level of 3-star general in the United States military. And I like to think that the leaders in our military, that you don't get to that level unless you have your stuff wired tight, solid, a good leader. And, seeing Michael Flynn, I know that, he's a rarity, but it just amazes me that he was able to climb as high as he did in the military.
What do you say to the people, though, Rich, who go, look, we now see this leaked email of the Oath Keepers, membership list. A lot of them are military. A lot of them are law enforcement. That, the military and law enforcement now, maybe more than at any point in our history, infiltrated by these kind of groups and this kind of thinking.
Yeah, and they need to be absolutely purged from the military, purged from the police force, purged from, running for office. All of these people, none of these people deserve to serve in leadership roles. If you were in the military and you were home on leave and you hung out with some of these guys, I get it. Maybe because I can remember Oath Keepers in my hometown, and there was a group of them, and they would always go and serve as the security for some of the festivals and stuff like that. But after seeing what took place on January the 6th, knowing how involved they were, we're getting ready to watch Elmer Fudd, their leader, who shot his eye out on a daggone gun range. We're about to see him get, prosecuted. And, I think now that we've seen all that and we know exactly what the Oath Keepers are about, then that's a different story. Some of these people need to be absolutely purged, but even if they're like young soldiers, they had better absolutely be willing to, 100% denounce this organization.
But what do you say to the people who look at the three percenters, the Oath Keepers, the Minutemen, all of these militia groups, and for years have been saying this is who they are? Why are we now surprised that they proved what people have been saying all these years?
Yeah, well, it's easy to see these people and see how dangerous they are, and listen to their words that they spread and the propaganda that they spread. But on January 6th was different. January 6th was no more. It was no longer talking. Anybody can run their pie hole all they want, but when you actually put action to it, then that's a different story. It kicked it up another notch. And now seeing what the Proud Boys and the Oath Keepers and the Three Percenters did when they participated in January 6th, that's a different story. Now, as far as I'm concerned, they are a criminal entity and they need to be treated, period.
Yeah, no. Again, the leader of the Oath Keepers on trial, going to be tried to fire his lawyers, and when I saw it, I think I mentioned this the other day. It seems to me just an attempt to prolong the inevitable, which he's going to be tried and hopefully convicted. The judge was having none of it.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. They're going to play this BS games. Just like your Steve Bannons and people like that. They always think that they're one step of everybody, and the truth is they're one step ahead of the poorly educated base. But anybody that's got their head on straight knows and can see them coming a mile away. At the end of the day, these people are going down. I believe that the leaders of the Oath Keepers and the Proud Boys, I look for at least 15 years. That's my thoughts.
Wow, and that would be helpful. Now you brought up Steve Bannon. It's expected Thursday for him to be indicted.
Yeah, and this was part of the whole stealing from the wall. And that's one of the things that always bothers me is you have all these people out here that are Trump loyalists that, don't realize Donald Trump had 14 days between the time they stormed the Capitol until the time he left office. He didn't even try to pardon those people that stormed the Capitol for him, because he didn't care about them. He pardoned Roger Stone. He pardoned Manafort. He pardoned Bannon. He pardoned Flynn. Those are the types of people that he pardoned. He didn't care about the actual people that stormed the Capitol for him. And that's how it is. So, at the end of the day, I just wish more people would wake up and see the writing on the wall, because that's what this is. I want to see Steve Bannon go down. I don't want to see 30 days. I know that on two parts of his crime, those can go up to a year each. I want to see him get a year for every one of them. You know, I'm sick and tired of watching people like that get a slap on the wrist, and average everyday people, other people, absolutely go down.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. You're listening to the Rick Smith Show. We're Rich Ojeda. Rich is the national spokesperson for No Dems Left Behind. NoDemsLeftBehind.com, the website. We'll get links out on social media. I can check out the work that they do. Now, again, this is one of these moments where you look at the Trump administration, one of the greatest criminal enterprises I think that's ever taken office. And we're starting to see, I think, a number of people being on trial. How come we haven't really seen the kind of rolling over that I was hoping to expect? The rats really trying to save themselves. Do they still believe that in 24 he's going to become president and pardon the whole lot of them?
No, I think that it's all about timing right now. I think that everybody, for the most part, wants DeSantis, but they know that DeSantis cannot claim to run for the presidency until Donald Trump is put away and denied to be able to run for the presidency, because first and foremost, as long as Donald Trump is out there claiming he's running, nobody can run against him, because if they do, then they have to go against Trump, and no Republican can win without Trump's base. So what they're hoping is they're hoping that Donald Trump is going to be disqualified here soon, which he should be, and then somebody like DeSantis is going to say, "Hey, don't worry about it. if I win in 2024, I'll take care of you, Donald Trump. And then Donald Trump will then tell his base, support Ron DeSantis. And that's the only perfect scenario for them. Anything other than that is a no-go. If they don't arrest Donald Trump and he's a 2024 candidate, Donald Trump will never be able to win. He couldn't win the popular vote in this last race. And make no mistake about it, there's a lot of Republicans that are not voting for Donald Trump anymore, to include many that died during COVID.
Yeah. Now, look, you just had the FBI find, documents that, according to the Washington Post and other reports, describing foreign militaries, their military defenses, nuclear capabilities. Found this at the Golden Palace there at Mar-a-Lago, among a whole bunch of other really closely held secrets. And I don't know the justification of why you think you could take it. I don't know how he got all this stuff, and I don't know how you justify this president having them at a freaking country club. There's in no world is this sane.
No, there is no justification for that. It doesn't work like that. And, I held a top secret security clearance, and if I fraction of that, I would have lost my military career and my freedom. And understand that, okay, why are the Republicans, why are Fox News, OAN, and Newsmax not answering the question as to why did he have those documents? First and foremost, anybody who's held a top secret security clearance knows none of that stuff was declassified, because it has to be declassified and then it has to have declassified stamped across it, which it did not have. It was not declassified. That's just how it is. And you got to think, why would Donald Trump have in his possession the nuclear capabilities of another country unless he was going to try and make them have to pay, for him to not give it to somebody, or he was going to sell it to their enemies? I tell people all the time, it was to sell or to trade. Those were the only two reasons why he had all those documents down there in Mar-a-Lago. And we now don't even know what has been seen, what has been photographed, what has been sent to other countries out there. We have no clue. And the truth is you can't put it past Donald Trump. He's a selfish, egotistical, narcissist, absolute sack is what he is. And I hope and pray that this man goes down. And we need to deal with him. Don't worry about the repercussions. Let these poorly educated knuckleheads rise up if they want to. They'll get put down too, but we got to squash this quick.
Yeah, now it does bring up the question. Jared Kushner got $2 billion from the Saudis. Maybe?
Yeah, exactly. And you also have to wonder, did Jared Kushner give them the information where Khashoggi was going to be before they snatched him up and murdered him? I mean, we have no clue. And you can't put it past none of these people. These people don't care about our country. They only care about one thing, and that's themselves, period.
Now, you said you had national security clearance. How hard is it to get a hold of these documents and the process? Because I'm still trying to figure out how he gathered all of this stuff. I mean, this is a lot of stuff, Rich.
All of that is a major investigation. First and foremost, those documents dealing with another nation's nuclear capabilities, it is illegal for them to even be out of a skiff, period. And you got to understand that, a top secret security clearance does not give you the ability to look at those type of documents. Those documents are only seen by literally probably 4 or 5 people, period. That's it. Just because you have a top secret security clearance doesn't mean that you get to look at certain things that are not, part of what you do. So, how did those documents get from the skiff into those boxes? How did those boxes get from Washington, D.C. to Mar-a-Lago? Because make no mistake about it, anything that is secret, top secret, classified, it cannot move in a regular moving truck. And I believe that's exactly what happened. That alone is a crime. All of this stuff. For anybody, to get a security clearance, even a secret, it takes forever. It's months of paperwork. And you got to go back and you've got to remember every person's name. They sent people to my hometown and talked to my middle school teachers and asked them, could Richard Ojeda be trusted with secret information? That's the level that they go to when you get a clearance like this. So, it is just hard to imagine. Jared Kushner and Ivanka didn't even go through the process. Donald Trump told them, give them a clearance when they did not go through the process. They didn't go through the 3 months of paperwork. They didn't do any of that. Donald Trump basically gave them a pass.
Now, but let's finish up on this, because the argument that I'm getting from my friends on the right is none of this stuff applies because he was president. He could wave the magic wand, Rich. It all goes away because he waved the magic wand.
No, that's not true. That is not true. You don't wave a magic wand over documents. You have to get the documents declassified. And let me tell you something. There are documents that Donald Trump cannot declassify. Just because he's a president of the United States does not mean he's above the law. That's what our country is all about. And you don't get to just say, I'm declassifying this information. You cannot declassify nuclear capabilities. You can't do it. And Donald Trump is now saying that. And of course, his base is going to do everything in their power. But imagine this. Could you imagine what would happen if Hillary Clinton would have been found in possession of a top secret document? They would have went absolute crazy. Remember, they had 4 years to find Hunter's laptop and Hillary's email, and they failed miserably. But that's the same crowd right now that acts as if Donald Trump didn't do anything wrong. Make no mistake about it. Those were the ones that were screaming lock her up the entire time. And it's absolute garbage.
No, I'm right there with you. Rich, as always, great stuff. Appreciate the time, man. Keep up the passion.
All right, brother. I appreciate you, man.
Our good friend Rich Ojeda. Make sure you check out the website, NoDemLeftBehind.com. We'll get links out on social media. You can take a look at that. Quick break. Right back. Stick around.
If you're a fan of the show, you've heard our labor history in 2 segments, and you can hear them on the radio pretty much anywhere in the U.S. Labor history has never been more important than it is right now. So here's what we'd like you to do. Tell a teacher. Tell a teacher that labor history is important and that they can get digestible 2-minute lessons that are absolutely free. Free to download, free to use, free to share. Tell a teacher to go to thericksmithshow.com/history and help us put labor back where it belongs, in the classroom. Generations of American workers fought, bled, and died to build the American way of life. It's our job to keep their stories alive. Go tell a teacher that we're here to help them do just that. Find us at thericksmithshow.com/history today.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So Rita sent me an email during the break. She writes, Rick, in response to all these draconian laws being passed in red states to ban abortion and control women's bodies, if women decided to refuse to have sex as a way to protest and prevent forced pregnancy, I bet right-wing Republicans would then pass laws to decriminalize rape. I don't disagree, but look at a state like Ohio, where if you're married, there's no such thing as rape. I'm not. You can look this up. They've already done that, so to speak. So there's no withholding. Sorry, but I get the point. It is about the power and the control, and this is where I keep saying, listen, pay attention. If you've got daughters, listen, pay attention. I've said this in the past. I could live in conservative world as a white guy, simply. But I do have daughters, and they would have to live under the kind of draconian laws that keep getting passed in these places. It's kind of frightening, and I worry about the future of this country for my daughters. I worry about what they're going to have to encounter from these people. It's frightening. Very, very frightening stuff. Let's quick go to the phones. Got Christopher from Chicago on line 1. Christopher, how are you today?
Hi, Rick. How are you today?
I'm good. What's on your mind?
Hey, your friend Rich was just on, and he said if they found classified documents on Hillary's server, James Comey's on TV saying they did. So they did find them.
Now, if you remember and you go back, those were classified after the fact, after they were sent.
Top secret classified.
Those were.
I mean, you can watch the video of James Comey.
No, I've seen it, and I've also found I've also seen the report that they came out with. If she did this, why is she not? Hold on, stop. If she did this, why is she not in jail? Why during the 4 years that Trump was president and had the DOJ, had Billy Barr there for him, had the FBI, Christopher Wray, his guy, why did they during those 4 years not indict, try, and convict her?
Because in my opinion, it's a big cabal, and they all watch out for each other. They're never going to put any of them in jail. None of them.
This is where you and I probably would agree normally.
About you.
This is where we probably would normally agree, but I think what Trump has done has gotten so many people outraged that something has to be done.
What did he do that got so many people outraged? Exactly.
He's got nuclear secrets in. Chris, come on.
Okay, an anonymous source, once again, an anonymous source is saying this. When you can prove to me that that's what they have, then I might get on board with you.
Would you believe that?
Right now,
hold on. Okay, so you're going to say that if that's the case, you're on that, and you would agree with that Trump should be tried and convicted. Is that what you're saying? I want to get you on the record, Chris. I want to get you on the record, Chris, of saying that if that is true, and it looks like the DOJ is moving that direction, you're going to go along. Just yes or no answer. This is there's no verbiage. There's no back and forth. Yes or no.
Wait, there's no. I mean, the FBI has proved to lie.
No, you see, you keep filibustering. You're not answering the question. The question is very simple.
Why would I say yes
very
to that
simple.
when they're untrustworthy? They're untrustworthy. Right. Why would I believe them?
There you go. Okay,
that's the truth.
So you're going to believe nothing.
They lied to
there's no point in going any further with it. Then, no matter what comes out, no matter what is presented, no matter what you're saying is, no matter what is presented, you're not going to believe it, and you're immovable. And I get that, Chris. Okay.
No,
that's what you just said. You said you don't believe them, and I get it, and I appreciate it. Thank you.
I mean, why would I trust the FBI? Why?
I trust our judicial system because if we don't, we don't have.
You do. The same people that put black people in jail for all those years. That system you trust. You can't have it both ways. You can't say that they put innocent black people in jail for years and then say you trust us. Stand that. I mean, how could you have it both ways?
What do we have if we don't have a judicial system that we can trust? We have nothing.
This is just my opinion, Rick.
Okay.
We need to get rid of all of them. Vote for a new person, whoever your representative. Put a new Democrat in, put a new Republican in. They're all corrupt. They don't care about us, the people, anymore. None of them. That's what I keep trying to tell everybody. They don't care about you and I. They don't. You think Democrats care about the working man? John Kerry, Nancy Pelosi cares about the working man more than Mitch McConnell? None of them do. They don't care about you and I. They care. Pocket. That's it.
No,
my opinion.
No, this is why I hope people will get out in November and vote. I appreciate the call, man. Thanks. I come back to this point, and this is where I got to wrap this up. Without a judicial system that we can have some faith in, and look, it's got problems. Whenever you got people involved in anything, you got problems. But if we're in a position where we don't believe anything that comes out of our judicial system, we've got bigger problems than just one orange guy. Just my thoughts. I'd love to hear yours. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. If you miss any portion of the program, make sure you grab the podcast. Always there, always available, just there for you. Going to take a quick break. Right back. Stick around.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. This day in labor history, the year was 1916. That was the day that the Federal Employees Compensation Act was signed into law by President Woodrow Wilson. The act was sponsored by Senator John Kern, a Democrat from Indiana, and Daniel McGillicuddy, a Democratic congressman from Maine. The act provided compensation for federal civil service employees that lost wages because they were hurt or killed on the job. There was great debate at the time over whether employees injured at work deserved to be compensated. Before the turn of the 20th century, those who sustained workplace injuries had little recourse. Employers blamed workers for accidents and typically refused compensation, leaving families destitute. Edward Gaynor, the president of the National Association of Letter Carriers, explained the debate around the 1916 proposal, saying, quote, "The only question, the fundamental question involved in this discussion is whether or not society should bear the burden of the injured worker in any industry." Increasingly, some lawmakers were beginning to make the case that society should indeed bear that burden. Workers and labor leaders organized around issues of workplace safety and demanded a compensation if they were injured on the job. The law providing such a safety net for federal employees was passed through the House of Representatives by an overwhelming margin of 288 to 6. Although the act only applied to federal employees, it was an important step forward in recognizing that all workers deserve to be compensated for workplace injuries. The Federal Office of Workers' Compensation Programs that operates today traces its history directly back to the 1916 Act. And because of this 1916 Act, 3 million federal employees and their families are covered under the Act's protection.
In the world of work, what two occupations might seem to have the very least in common? How about long-haul truck drivers and school librarians? Yes, an odd pairing, but solidarity forever. Start with truckers. The job is literally a grueling haul. You're wrangling a massive 18-wheeler some 500 miles a day for 2-3 weeks straight, putting up with traffic jams, storms, bad roads, lunatic drivers, helter-skelter scheduling, truck stop food, sleeping in the truck, and battling fatigue, aches, your bladder, and loneliness. Trucking used to be a good union job with decent pay and conditions, until the deregulation craze 4 decades ago brought in Wall Street profiteers and fast-buck hustlers who turned the industry into anti-union exploiters. As a result, the yearly quit rate for drivers is almost 100%. But rather than retaining drivers by upping pay and stopping their torturous treatment, the corporate bosses have rushed to Washington, demanding access to an even cheaper pool of low-wage workers, teenagers. Yes, put an 18-year-old on that 18-wheeler and keep them profits rolling. And here's another good job suddenly turned ugly: school librarian. Yes, while student enrollments rise and the need for these nurturers of our society's literacy is greater than ever, their quit rate is soaring, not because of pay or long hours, but because of raw right-wing politics. These dedicated, invaluable educators are literally being abused by demagogic GOP politicians and their extremist partisans who've launched an anti-librarian crusade, including book banning and witch hunting. Come on, how twisted are you to pick on librarians? This is Jim Hightower saying, forget the law of supply and demand. Today's job market is being ruled by greedmeisters and political lunatics.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So yesterday we talked about the Major League Baseball Players Association announcing that they had a majority of minor leaguers sign union authorization cards and sought voluntary recognition from the owners. That was huge news, big news. Today, more news. The Major League Baseball Players Association announced that they are going to be joining the AFL-CIO, which is, I think, a big move. Unity, solidarity, all that kind of stuff, moving all in the right direction. Here to share some thoughts on if this is a big deal and what it means. I've asked our good friend Dave Jamieson to come talk with us. Dave's a labor reporter over at Huffington Post, huffpost.com, the website, if you want to check out the work that they do there. Dave, thanks for taking time for us.
Hey, Rick, good to be here.
So let's start with the authorization cards. This was quick. I mean, it was bang bang bang. Like a week and a half or something like that.
Yeah, that's what Tony Clark, the executive director of the MLBPA, had to say. That it really was just a matter of days. They feel like things were pretty primed for it, and it's coming together fast. So that's majority support, and in a week and change. Given all we've heard about the conditions in the minor leagues, maybe it shouldn't be all that surprising.
Well, I got to tell you, this is one of those things where you go, it's 2022. I remember this stuff back when I was a kid, in the 80s. Why is this taking so long?
Yeah, I think there's probably a part of it too, and Tony Clark and Liz Schuler, president of the AFL-CIO, both said this today, that they that there's something going on with young people in unions right now, and they see what's happening with the minor leagues as a part of that, sort of a bit of an awakening happening of younger people deciding to have a little more agency at work and wanting to kind of have a say over the terms.
Yeah, and I would argue they actually put a little work into doing it. Maybe. I mean, how I guess the question I should ask, to be fair, how much effort have they put in the past to trying to organize the minor league players?
It's a great, I think that's absolutely a factor, and it's clear that at this point they're very serious about it, and I think that's a big reason the campaign among the minor leaguers is sort of dovetails with the announcement they made today of joining the AFL-CIO, the Major League Baseball Players Association. They've never been an affiliate, in the history of their organization, and now they are. And I think I think there's a lot of reasons at play for why it makes sense now. I think what the players union has been through the last few years, you had the shortened 2020 pandemic season where there was a lot to figure out and a lot to bargain over, and then of course the lockout that preceded this season, but also this effort that they have cooking in the minor leagues right now. I think it kind of makes sense to come under the tent, be part of the AFL-CIO. There's probably ways that the federation can help in what is it's a really big organizing effort, right? I mean, they have around 1,000 members in the major leagues of professional ball players, and I think the minors, it's more on the range of 5,000. So there's a lot of work to do, and this is probably the beginning, not the end. So, the more help they can get, probably the better for them.
So the other question then becomes, you got the majority of cards signed. Does Major League Baseball and the owners, do they recognize the union? Do they go in a long, drawn-out assault campaign? How do you see this playing out?
It's hard to say. I mean, they said they have a cleared 50%. I don't think the league is going to cave. If they say they've got 50% cards, they're probably going to want to keep building that support. I do think there's probably going to be a lot of public support for it. I think. Obviously, we know that the general approval of unions is high. The general public likes unions a lot, particularly right now. But also, I think there's increasing awareness of the working conditions and the wages in the minor league system. And so I don't know whether, the league would be up for a really ugly, bloody battle over this. But we've seen it time and again how willing, how far employers are willing to go. You look at Starbucks right now and others, the willingness to fight this sort of thing. So, I wouldn't make any predictions on their willingness to voluntarily recognize.
Yeah, I mean, because again, this is one of those. They've got the money, they've got the power, I would assume, but public sentiment would have to play into this. And I said yesterday, it would be interesting to see if the major league players were willing to, potentially go on strike at some point down the road to support them, because ultimately, and we had a caller yesterday saying, what we need to be doing, so everybody needs to strike. That's the power we have, and the reality is I think we're going to see more strikes at some point in the near future.
Well, I think that it's a big question that hangs over this move that the players union is making. they're framing this, of course, as an effort towards solidarity, joining the AFL-CIO. They say they have more growing awareness of working conditions on the fringes of the sport. Look, when they had the lockout, you had thousands of ballpark concessions workers, members of Unite Here, who were out of work. You had IATSE members who work in broadcasting who did not have work. So the lockout had a big impact on other, lesser paid workers than professional ball players. But, as some people remarked to me today, they think kind of the proof will be in the pudding in terms of whether they really do a show of solidarity, whether you see ball players being more outspoken in support of other workers. And obviously the minor leaguers, that will be a big test case, right? If there is an ugly fight over unionization in the minor leagues, to what degree will we see player reps and other really high profile ball players going to bat for them?
No, that's an excellent question. You're listening to the Rick Smith Show with Dave Jamieson, labor reporter at Huffington Post, huffpost.com, the website, if you want to check out the work that they do. We'll get links out on social media. Now, you talked about, the working conditions of the players in the minor leagues, and I don't think most people know. I mean, some of the people I talked to, we get the, back when I was younger, and I alluded to this earlier, things were so much worse. They were poorly paid. It was driving around on rickety buses. That whole Bull Durham kind of mentality of what the minor leagues are supposed to be like. What are the working conditions today?
Yeah, it truly is. These are players. They've been filing minimum wage lawsuits. I mean, that tells you a lot right there. You hear anecdotes of players, sleeping in their cars or whatever to save money. I mean, people who are trying to grind it out and make it, and they're really, just not getting by while doing it. So I don't think this is a situation where you unionize and all of a sudden, you see tremendous wage gains. I think they're more just talking about basic sustainability, making enough money to eke by and have a little dignity while you're doing it, because the pay really truly is that low. And I think there's, like in a lot of jobs, there's an element of well, hey, look, this is an amazing opportunity you have. How much can you really expect to be making? You're sort of living the dream right now. And I think we've seen advocacy groups in the minor leagues sprout up in the last few years to really push back on this and try to get these players some more decent working conditions.
Yeah, I mean, it's one thing to to follow your dreams, but it's another thing to do that and then live in poverty and like you said, have to live in your car. I mean, for me, this would be about putting a floor under their feet and saying, nobody's going to fall below that. We're going to at least pay minimum wage. That seems like a good starting position. No, maybe,
Yeah, I think, you're talking about, reasonable stipends and wages, stuff that a regular person could look at and say, okay, that seems fair. Because I think where they are right now for a lot of these players, that's not where they're at.
Yeah, I mean, and for me, the other part of this is, I keep talking about building a society where people support each other in their efforts to unionize. And I use my aunt as an example all the time, who has never been a union member, was never in a profession where she could be, but one of the most staunch supporters of labor and workers organizing that I know. Someone who will drive by a picket line and drop things off and and things like that. And for me, it's building that kind of society again where we're supporting each other. And now you tweeted out earlier that Washington Nationals pitcher Sean Doolittle, they Unite Here 23 in DC, made him an honorary member because, well, he supports the concession workers. And this is the kind of thing that I think we have to be talking about more often, building that class solidarity, but also across professions and across employment lines.
Yeah, I think that's right. And one thing that came up today with this announcement, and I was talking with George Atala from the NFL Players Association, and they've been an AFL-CIO member for a long time. And he was saying, look, when in the NFL, when the players got locked out in 2011, the first people out there for us were the steel workers, were Unite Here members, concessions workers. They had our backs and they view it as important to have theirs. And so I think there's an effort among the players associations, and look, the NBA Players Association is not an AFL-CIO member, I think there's an awareness of some of these that like, hey, all the sports unions should be aligned, should be in touch and in league with each other, but also there should be an alliance with other unions representing different workers in the sport, typically lower paid workers who are making their living on the fringes of the game. And so I think I think that's a significant mentality that they're talking about right now, kind of trying to bring more of an awareness among players to that.
Yeah, and look, the people who put on the whole presentation, from the person who cleans the stadiums to the person who provides the concessions to the people on the field, all of those people should be fairly compensated and get a share of the wealth that their labor creates. For me, that's the simple part in all this.
Yeah, I think they're all fighting for trying to get their piece of the same pie. Of course, the players tend to get a bigger slice of it, but I think it's important for them to be aware of the other workers who make their living on the game.
I want to change topics a little bit. Starbucks. There's a bunch of organizing going on there. Anything to report on the Starbucks front?
Yeah, well, there's a lot of complaints piling up against Starbucks at the labor board. They're at around 20 now that the regional directors have filed, alleging illegal firings, illegal store closures, and all kinds of illegal retaliation. So the union continues to rack up election wins, but the Starbucks is not letting up on their counter campaign. Well, I think we're entering an interesting stage now where a lot of this stuff is finally going to be litigated. So Starbucks has been saying all along these are just accusations. We haven't done anything illegally. We are not retaliating against anyone. But now people are starting to offer testimony, and we're going to see administrative law judges coming down with decisions pretty soon, where a lot of this stuff we're going to get answers to some of what happened. So they got a new CEO coming in, but no indications yet that Starbucks is changing its approach here.
I can't imagine that they will, because it's what corporations have gotten away with. And if you're a CEO in this environment with the laws the way they are, it's almost it would be CEO malpractice to cave at this moment, because the pendulum is fully on your side of the midline.
Yeah, and today, AOC and some other members sent a letter to Howard Schultz about a couple of union organizers who were fired in New York. And I think the political pressure, could be a big piece of this in terms of maybe bringing Starbucks to heel a bit here. They have a big bargaining fight going on that's in its early stages. You got these workers all over the country who are trying to coordinate with one another and get on the same page at what they bargain. But the political component is going to be, I think, a big one, moving forward, and kind of how much pressure is there on the company to settle these cases and to come to an agreement at the bargaining table.
Yeah, I keep coming back to at this point, it's a good time. It's good timing, having a Biden appointee as the general counsel there at the NLRB, and it's a good moment to maybe get some right decisions there. We'll see how this plays out. But Dave, as always, great work. I appreciate you taking time for us. Keep it up.
Thanks for having me, Rick. Good talking to you.
Anytime, our good friend Dave Jamieson. Make sure you check out the work that he does over at HuffPost.com. We'll get links over at social media, our sites there. Where you can check that out. I'll stumble through it eventually. Quick break right back after this. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1980. The 32nd annual Emmy Awards show took place despite 51 of the 52 nominated performers boycotting the event. At issue was a strike by the members of the Screen Actors Guild. Powers Booth was the only nominated actor to attend. He won the Emmy that year for portraying the cult leader Jim Jones in a made-for-TV movie. In his acceptance speech, he acknowledged his lonely presence at the Emmys. He said, "This is either the most courageous moment of my career or the stupidest." SAG members, along with the American Federation of Television and Radio Artists and the American Federation of Musicians, all went on strike that summer. Members of the Screen Actors Guild were displeased with their salaries. They wanted a 32% increase. They were also concerned about changes in the industry. They did not feel they were being compensated for the revenue they helped generate through paid cable and video cassettes. The Screen Actors Guild had its origins in the Maskers Club. Actors formed that club because they were upset with the grueling hours expected of them by Hollywood studios. Eventually, in 1933, the Screen Actors Guild was started. After initial hesitation by some big-name actors to join the union, SAG membership grew from 80 to more than 4,000 members. Many famous actors supported the union, including Humphrey Bogart and James Cagney. In the late 1940s, future President Ronald Reagan was elected president and served as president of SAG for 7 terms. The 1980 strike was one of the longer strikes in the union's history, lasting 94 days and settling at the end of October.
Hooray for Hollywood, that phony super coney Hollywood.
Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com. Welcome back to The Rick Smith Show. Check out our website, thericksmithshow.com. Questions, comments, something on your mind, you can email me, Rick, at thericksmithshow.com. I got a couple of emails I wanted to jump into. Caught my attention, and if you want to email me, Rick at thericksmithshow.com. I do answer all emails, and then sometimes we get them here on the air. No name, just an email address. Rick, your Teamster caller yesterday talked about labor's violent past, which most people don't really know anything about. I love your labor history. And 2, how do we get labor education into the schools? Been asking about that for a very long time. Something that we should teach, actual history, actually what happened. Wisconsin has a labor history component to their education system. I think it's a quarter, sometime in high school, where you learn about, the struggles, the battles, the fights, the labor wars that happened in this country. And I say that component, and I'm surprised that the Republicans, and maybe they have, if my listeners in Wisconsin want to chime in and let me know. It's, back in 2011 when you had the huge uprising of, everyone going to the Capitol, that was cited as one of the things that they hearkened back to their education and understanding how important labor organizing is and standing up in the face of fighting for labor rights. So when Scott Walker at the time, through Act 10 was trying to, and eventually did, basically screw over all the state workers and, did a whole bunch of really, really terrible things that didn't help the state and certainly didn't help workers. Helped the rich people though. And that's what it was meant to do. But all of those TAAs from the University of Wisconsin-Madison who started that uprising, that's what they hearkened back to. So yeah, we need labor education. It's part of why we do labor history in 2. It was part of the reason that we decided that it was important to remember that stuff, because I'll tell you, even as much as I like to think I know, there's always more. It's quite remarkable. Another email, Rick, love the show and the work you do. You had a Trump caller yesterday talking about unions. I'm curious your thoughts on his assertion that unions killed people and his belief that the movie Hoffa was real. Well, the movie Hoffa was, there were some liberties. I remember I had interviewed former President Jim Hoffa about his father and about the movie, and no, they did push back on it. And I do find the movie entertaining. I find it interesting. Now there are stories that kind of stuff did happen. My grandfather told stories of people doing things that they weren't proud of. But when you're put in desperate situations, when you're in desperate conditions, desperate people do desperate things. And that's where I'm going to leave that. Do I know that unions killed people? I think there was the mine worker story. Anytime you've got people doing things, you've got people doing things, man. And if we're going to go down that path, compare, what's corporate America done? How many people did they take out over the years? So history is what it is. People fighting for their opportunities. And again, history we should be learning, an unvarnished history. There was some stuff that went on. That simple. Now, question becomes, in this moment, learning our history, do we want to have a desperate working class? Do we want to have people who have nothing left to lose? And we're getting there. You listen to a lot of the people who are organizing right now in large numbers. They're almost to the point where there's nothing to lose. There's no hope and opportunity. That idea that we talk about in the program all the time, work hard, play by the rules, get ahead. That get ahead part is really important to that equation. And too many people it's not yet there for them. James writes, got another email talking about my interview with Secretary of Labor Marty Walsh. Said that he loved the discussion about the Fast Food Act in California. Hope that the plight of workers and the ability to do better. The part that caught my attention is he said that we're coming in the first generation of Americans who, for the majority, have no pension savings for their retirement. Ask presently what 60-year-old adults who have paid their mortgage, who put their kids through college, what they have in their 401ks. He says the ones that I have asked have anywhere between $20,000 and $60,000 to last potentially the next 20 years. And this is what I've been saying for a while. We're heading towards a retirement crisis because there's going to be people my age and a little bit older who are heading into retirement with nothing. The average 401k, they say something like $20,000. Because, we changed that defined benefit union pension because we allowed unions to get busted up. And they sold us on this idea that, hey, we can all be millionaires. We can all have $1 million 401ks. And I remember the first time an employer told me that. And years ago, I started a place and I go, you're going to have the option of a defined benefit or the defined contribution. You can choose at the end. And if you work here 30 years, you're going to have $1 million. You're going to be a millionaire. And I'm going, the only way they're going to let a dump truck driver have $1 million if a loaf of bread you need a wheelbarrow to pay for. You need a wheelbarrow full of cash to pay for. Because the powers to be just aren't going to allow someone to have that. And you look at the number of crashes on Wall Street and the amount of resources they've screwed working people out of. Now, am I against savings? No, I save myself. I put money into retirement accounts and things as everyone should. But because of my union, I still have a defined benefit pension that when I retire, I'm going to get, this is what we're going to get. And I want that security for every working person. This is, again, as a working class, something we should be talking about, not just whispering about, something we should be demanding once again. That kind of security that, again, the idea that if you work hard, you play by the rules, that you get ahead. It seems pretty simple to me. It seems, logical. And seems like something we had better figure out how to get to at some point. Because look, there's a generation of workers. You want to see angry people? Wait till they get to the end and there's nothing there. And they're working till they're dying. Now look, Ron Johnson's got an idea. You don't need to retire. You can just work all the way to the end. You just won't have to pay taxes at the end. But keep working. Yeah, that's it. Because that's where conservative ideology wants to take us. You spend your golden years working a crummy job for low wages. There you go. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you back here next time. You miss any portion of the program, make sure you grab the podcast. Thanks for being here.
You've been listening to The Rick Smith Show. Email Rick at rick@thericksmithshow.com.